Hello chess friends and welcome to Veresov Chess channel and welcome to a new chess opening theory video. So in this video I wanted to talk about a very unpleasant attack that you can face with the black pieces. Today I wanted to show you how to beat, how to destroy and dismantle the so-called Richter-Veresov attack. That's very unpleasant to handle sometimes, because if you don't know what to do in the Richter-Veresov attack with the black pieces, I think you could face many tactical but also positional problems that always white has. White is always preparing this whole concept to play queen to d2, queenside castling to attack you then in the center of the board. It's very unpleasant sometimes to handle these types of positions, these types of structures. So that's why in this video I wanted to show you really a beautiful and easy method to learn how to really meet this really uncomfortable attack by white. So let's start from the beginning, how to reach this position. So first of all, white plays the normal move d4. We are responding with knight to f6, and they're basically two, I think, most common concepts that white can play: knight to f3, or maybe they play the move c4. But now white plays the move knight to c3, wants of course to play e4 to connect both of these pawns, the d4 and e4 pawn. And my recommendation here is simply to battle for the center with the move d5. If you play something else, if you play something like e6, then you will reach probably the normal structures of the French defense. If you want to play the French, then you have to know really much more theory. e4 should be met, and of course with the move d5, then you're in the classical variation of the French. If you play something like g6 here, then again you didn't battle for the center. Your opponent will play the move e4, and now you could reach maybe some structures of the modern or Persian defense. So it's also something that you have to know by heart, and from this point on I think the game could be very complicated. So that's why my recommendation is to battle immediately for the e4 square, not allow here of course white to play the move e4. And you see now we're not, although this is d4 play, we're not again in this normal position of the queen's gambit decline, maybe of the Catalan opening that you can face, because the knight on c3 of course it battled for the e4 square, but you have also taken the natural plan for white to play the move c4. Now c4 is, in my opinion, not possible anymore, at least not in an early stage of the game. Maybe later you can play it in different positions, but now the whole concept, the whole plan with c4 is simply not working. Now it's a whole different position. It's not a queen's gambit decline anymore, it's simply the so-called Richter-Veresov attack after move bishop to g5. The whole plan, the whole concept, the whole idea of blacks in the beginning here, if you don't react here, maybe if you play something like h6, I guarantee you he'll take out the knight on f6 immediately, and then you have a weakened pawn structure. He'll hit you with the move e4, and I guarantee you not have here comfortable play. So that's why after move bishop to g5, my recommendation is to play this very calm but very solid move, knight from b to d7. What we're doing with this move is, after potential bishop to f6, we have always this opportunity to take out with another knight. So we didn't mess up our pawn structure. We still have a good control of the d4 square. We have still a control of the e4 square. And now with the bishop here, I think we could have beautiful game. I'm not saying, of course, this is completely winning for black, but I think you can be satisfied with the outcome in an early stage of the game. In move 4, you're already much better here. So in my opinion, this is a line that white probably will not play. What white is trying always to do in the Richter-Veresov attack is this concept. As I said, he's still battling for the e4 square. He's trying to get e4. He's trying to connect his d4 pawn with the e4 pawn. He's trying to play queen to d2 and then castle queenside and have really a powerful and fast attack. What we should do here? So here my recommendation is to play again a subtle but really beautiful calm move h6. In the beginning it seems so that this move is not doing so much. If of course black wants to take, as I said, nothing wrong also with this line, but now after knight to f6, again we can be satisfied. If he tries something like e4, then we play e6, and look at this. White has already many dark square problems. Look at this: f2, g3, e3, f4. All of these squares are clear targets. Also, what the issue here is, white doesn't have any more the dark square bishop. The dark square bishop is of course a key protector of dark squares. Now I think the normal ideas of blacks here are a6, b5, c5, bishop to b4. Maybe it's also an opportunity. For instance, if e5 happens, then we have this one, knight to d7. we have still our concept c5 b5 a6 b5 b4 c4. I think the expansion on the queen side here is very solid for black, in my opinion. Good game for sure. For instance, white continues with the move f4. We hit now the flanks with the move c5. If he wants to play f5 in some lines, doesn't matter, we always hit this one. Queen to d4, bishop to c5 comes with the tempo. In my opinion, again, a messed up game. For instance, here what he could play, instead of move f5, he can play, of course, the move knight to f3. But now my recommendation, for instance, in this particular position, is to hit the flanks immediately with the move g5. This is the way to go. Look at this, very wild stuff. F takes g, we play a takes g, and now again we have dynamic opportunities around the square d4. We're threatening also the move g4, which is also unpleasant. The knight is controlling here the d4 square, so if we attack the knight, then white doesn't have more the control of the d4 square. Very unpleasant position. For instance, also after move g5 that we have seen, f5 again could be an opportunity, but it doesn't matter. We simply play g4. Now he could try maybe this one. We take out the pawn. He could maybe try queen to d3, but don't worry, we just pick up the knight after a couple of checks. No good checks are possible anymore for white. Queen to e8 solves, I think, all of the tactical problems. So I'm showing you this line because many times black will maybe get challenged in this way. White will rely maybe on some kind of an activity, but you see, after move bishop to f6, I think, and knight to f6, I think you have solved all of the positional and tactical problems in an early stage of the game, which is of course the plan that you wanted to have with the black pieces. So let's go back. So after move h6 that we have started to analyze now, many times white will continue with bishop to h4, still with the same plan. f3 e4, queen to d2, and queenside castling. But notice now that when the bishop on h4 is here, that the bishop is always a little bit loose. There is also, when white is playing too aggressive with the move e4, there is always the opportunity to hit further on the flanks with the move g5 to create an extra tempo against this bishop. In some lines we can maybe even deliver a check here if possible, if it happens, but we should not forget about this. There is always this tactic maybe to deliver check on b4 with the queen, hit the king, and also the bishop on h4. I like to call it really the loose bishop because it's sometimes white is forgetting that the bishop is here, so you are creating sometimes some tactics on the fourth rank, so really unpleasant for white sometimes to handle. So after move h4, now my recommendation is to hit immediately the center with the move c5. If you play something passive like e4 e6, then e4 is coming, and I think you have lost a very important tempo. I'm not saying this is completely busted or something, but it's very unpleasant to handle. I think c5 here that you can play is already challenging white's center, and white wanted to get the center in the first place. So what should white play here? For instance, if he plays now d takes c5, it seems like a solid idea to play this kind of approach. Now my recommendation is to play a calm move e6. e6 is very cool because immediately we're attacking the pawn. If he tries something like b4 here in order to keep his extra pawn, actually it's almost game over here for white, believe me or not. This is a huge positional but also tactical blunder. Here white is already busted after move a5 or b6, so you can break the pawn trade with a5 or b6. b6 is even more correct, I think. Look at this, with the move b6 you're allowing here basically c6, but it doesn't matter. We simply pick up this pawn on b4. Okay, white can pick up the piece. It seems so that we have lost decisive material, but after bishop to d7 and queen to d4 must move here for white to attack the bishop and also protect the knight on c3. We play simply queen to e7. Now he castles out of this attack, but now with rook to c8, this is devastating. Look at this, the knight doesn't have good squares. Knight cannot escape on a4. These squares are all taken. What he could do is, of course, here bishop to f6, g takes f6, and then to retreat with the knight. But now after bishop to a4, I guarantee you this is not pleasant play. Look at this, all of these pieces undeveloped. We'll play also maybe here kingside castling would simply support further the attack. I'm not seeing good ways how to defend this position. Rook to d2 is not possible because this bishop is on b4 is attacking this piece. So in my opinion, messed up game here for white for sure. So as I said, here after move c5, d takes c5, e6. What white could do maybe is to play a very interesting choice. e4 has been played, for instance, in a beautiful game played by Shakir Mamedjadov against Veselý. A very, very aggressive concept, but again, you should not worry. We simply pick up this pawn, bishop to c5. Now white continues with e takes d5, but now we play a tricky move, queen to b6. And that's what I said about this loose bishop on h4. Look at this. If white continues with knight to a4 here, attacking the queen and the bishop, we have this resource. Queen to b4, attacking the knight, attacking the king, but also attacking the bishop on the 4th rank. c3 is must move for white, attacking, of course, the queen, but also protecting the knight. But now we simply pick up the piece here, and in my opinion, this is game over for white. Very, very wild stuff. For instance, after e takes d5, queen to b6, a very, very often played line is now this line, d takes e6, but now we pick up with the pawn. It seems strange, but it's very, very crucial, I think, here to stay with this beautiful and powerful queen and bishop battery on dark squares. Now, knight from g2 e2 has to be played by white, but okay. White is defending the position so far, but the issue is now this knight on e2 is standing in the way of its own bishop. So again, a certain lack of development here for white. Here we can play something like knight to e5. This would be a good follow-up. And if, for instance, bishop to f6 happens, this is not working because you got checkmated here on e3. So that's why white has to play now here the move knight to f4. But we continue now with queen to b2. Now I think this is perfectly fine to play because after something like bishop to b5, we can trade off the pieces here. Now look at this. The knight on c3 is hanging. You have to again retreat with the knight and again queenside castling. Look at this. This would be, I think, optimal play here for white. For black, pardon me, sorry. White cannot castle here on the king side because the bishop is attacking this one. If you pick up, for instance, this piece, this knight is coming in. This rook is getting in a good way into the game. The knight will be attacked. So, in my opinion, a messed up game here again for white. E-file attack, I think, is devastating to handle for white. So this whole idea, look at this, with d takes e6 is also not working. As we said, f takes e6, the queen and bishop battery against the white king is simply too powerful. So let's go back. As I said, after move h6, bishop to h4, c5, we have seen d takes c4, d takes c5 is, in my opinion, not so good because of this opportunity with the move e6. As we said, after move e6, b4 is not so good because b6 is simply, in my opinion, immediately winning the game. So let's go back. After move c5, what white could do is to hit the center immediately with the move e4. Now, basically, there are two chances what you could do. Of course, you're not comfortable to face this kind of an attack in the center of the board from black perspective. So that's why always the best way to meet this kind of a dynamic play is, of course, to simplify the position by trading off more pawns. Releasing the pressure here in the center of the board is crucial. But what should we do? Which pawn should we take? Should we take out now the pawn on d4 or should we take out the pawn on e4? In my opinion, the correct way is to take the pawn on e4. And that's now, I think, a move that you have to memorize. Because if you play c takes d4, I'm not saying this is a mistake or something, but the continuation, I think, is more complicated to play. After queen c takes d4, white will probably play this line. Bishop to f6, and now after knight to f6, you basically invited your opponent's queen into the attack. So as I said, the whole concept, the whole strategy, the whole plan of whites was to play on this fast development with queen development and then to play queenside castle. Again, this is probably playable also for black. I'm not saying you made a mistake. I'm not saying that you will lose the game if you allow this position. But now you have to play something, I don't know, d takes e4, queen to d8, king to d8. Okay. King is now very weird in the center of the board. Now look at this, queenside castle, you play something like this, defendable. You'll not lose the game, but as I said, there are better opportunities. Now, after move here e4 that white is playing, my recommendation is to play d takes e4. Now, for instance, what can be played? For instance, if he tries d5 to pass through, has been played also in top GM level. Nothing spectacular about this move. We simply continue with our normal plan here. E takes f3. We have knight to f3 and now g5. We create an extra tempo against the bishop. Bishop to g3. Don't worry. And now bishop to g7. Here, in this particular position, I would even recommend you to stay a little bit longer with the king in the center. For instance, if we try something like queen to d2, queenside castling, then we have this resource: a6, b5, c4. He castles. We play knight to h5, hitting the bishop. Bishop retreats, and now b5. This is the way to go. d6, e6. Don't worry, we're staying compact here. He has this unpleasant, really annoying pawn to handle, but now bishop to b7, queen to a5. Look at this. Both of these bishops will play on this beautiful crossroads setup. Knight to f4 is an opportunity, and then you wait where he's going to attack you. If he tries maybe to attack here with queen to b7, we can also queenside castle, I think, in some lines. So don't worry so much. In my opinion, again, this should be a much better continuation here for white. We have gained also some pawns here, so it's a dynamic position. I'm not saying you have to also struggle here, you have to also battle, but I guarantee you white would not be also satisfied with the outcome, for instance, in this particular position. So after move d takes e4, probably f takes e4 is going to be played, but now we again don't pick up the pawn on b4. If that happened on d4, pardon me, here, then again you're inviting your opponent's piece into the game, and that's exactly what the Richter-Veresov Attack player wanted to get. He wanted to play on fast development, queenside casting, and then to gain huge activity. Although he has lost maybe some pawns, but that's the flow that he wants to get. After move queen to d4, I guarantee you this is again really uncomfortable play, because you can play e5, kick away the queen, but then you leave also the d5 square a little bit unprotected. So as I said, this is a line that I would not recommend here. Again, we play on this normal development method with queen to b6. If, for instance, something like knight to f3 happens, then we have a6, very important move to control b5. Now he could try maybe queen to d2, and now finally we pick up the pawn here in d4, because now if queen to d4 happens, of course, we can trade off the pieces. Look at this, queen to d4, queen to d4, knight to d4, and I think you're pretty solid here. We can play here e6, bishop to b4, hit the knight that controlling the e4 square, and without the queens on the board, I think, again, white would not be satisfied with the outcome, because the Richter-Veresov Attack player wants to have the queens on the board where he could create dynamics. Again, I'm not saying this is again completely winning for black or something, but this, I think, a position that you can play easily without complications. You're up some in material, so in my opinion, here a good continuation. Okay, sorry, you're not up in material, but the structural weakness that I try to say, the weakness on e4, the weak pawn, the isolated e pawn, is something that bothers always white in continuation of the game. That's not, as I said, a position that the Richter-Veresov Attack player wanted to get. Here, knight to d4 can be played instead of queen to d4, trying maybe to keep the queens on the board. But again, don't worry, e6, queenside castling, bishop to b4, hitting the knight, attacking the e4 pawn. Still notice our king is perfectly fine here in the center of the board. I'm not seeing good attacking opportunities immediately. For instance, queen to e3, then we play queen to c5 with preparation to play the move b5, something like, I don't know, bishop to e2, and now I think we can even simplify the game. Look at this, pick up now the pawn on e4. In my opinion, again, a good game here for black. As I said, the whole problem is always the isolated e pawn, so in my opinion, not a spectacular position that white wanted to get. So let's go back, let's go a fast run now. Look at this, and in the Richter-Veresov Attack, as we said, we control the d5, the e4 square with the move d5. If bishop to g5, we play knight to d7. After f3, we kick away the bishop, and then we play for the center. e4 should be met with d takes e4. Don't forget about this. After is e4, and now with queen to b6, we're putting more pressure, and of course create the isolated e pawn here for white. That's of course a structural weakness through the whole game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the studies. I hope that I helped you out with our preparation with the black pieces against this unpleasant Richter-Veresov attack. In my opinion, this is a solid concept. This is something that I would recommend you. Maybe there are, of course, further complications for you, but you have to always at least have some kind of approach, some kind of a line that you know that you're going to play. So we have seen also in some other concepts, for instance, after move d takes c5 in the beginning, this wasn't, of course, a good continuation for a white. It seems strange, of course, to play in this way, but look at this. As we said, e6, you play b4, but now with b6, I think the game is over. So these are, for instance, sidelines that you have to know by heart, that you have to memorize. But if you, I think, get out of the first tactical mess that white creates, I think that you have solid play, and you saw black have really, really good continuations. In my opinion, this is a good approach for you to meet the Richter-Veresov attack. So, okay, if you want to see more good defenses with the black pieces, you can also check out my hyper-accelerated ranks in defense, where we have a good preparation against e4. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say? Chess is the best, of course.